Welcome to my channel. The past few months have been really hard. My wife, Catherine, had an affair with someone she worked with, and it felt like the whole world knew, but no one dared to say anything. I was just as guilty as everyone else somehow. I thought it would all blow over and life would go back to how it used to be. Of course, that was a fantasy. Things were never going to be the same again. We had been married for 19 years and had 3 kids. Rob, our oldest, was 18. Catherine was pregnant with him when we got married. A year later, Donna was born, and the year after that, Darcy came along. After Darcy was born, I got a vasectomy. Our kids were great, and until recently we hadn't had any major problems with them. But now, it's clear that their issues are tied to their mother's affair. For the last 3 years, Catherine had been working in the claims department of a large insurance company. When she started putting in overtime several evenings a week, the kids and I quickly noticed her new hairstyle and how she had joined a gym. Her wardrobe also changed. It became a lot more revealing, which didn't sit well with me. Donna and Darcy once spotted her having lunch with her boss at a high-end restaurant, but she never brought it up. In desperation, I started following her like a heartbroken fool. She frequently and shamelessly met her lover at motels, and even though I didn't see the point, I still noted the times and dates of several of their rendezvous. As the affair dragged on, our family began to crumble, all without any real conversations. The kids were mad at their mother for betraying us and mad at me for not confronting her or trying to keep the family together. I was too blind to see that it was already a lost cause. The only time we gathered as a family was for dinner, but even then it was tense. There was hardly any talking, and as soon as the kids finished eating, they'd quietly disappear, often leaving the house until bedtime. "John, I can't deal with the kids' behavior much longer. If you don't get them in line, I will," Catherine said. "I'll handle it," I replied. "You've been saying that for a month now. I don't get what's gotten into them. Why are they suddenly acting out like this? If you have any solutions, maybe you could get some answers as well." "Oh, getting answers wouldn't be the hard part. Fixing everything would be," I said. "But I think we'll figure it out." "Are you going to tell me what's going on, or are you keeping it a secret?" "No secret. Tomorrow, I'm heading back to my parents' house." Catherine wasn't pleased. She stopped clearing the table and sat back down with a heavy, determined thud. "What are you talking about, John? You can't commute from Frackville, and I can't take care of the house and the kids on my own. How's that going to fix anything?" "Actually, Catherine, you won't have to worry about the kids. They're coming with me." Her face scrunched into a frown, and she pressed her lips together, but I wasn't surprised. She leaned her elbows on the table, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, "You're not taking my kids out of this house, not in a million years." "What makes you think you can do that?" "They're coming with me." Catherine sighed in frustration, stood up, and went back to clearing the table. She muttered something under her breath, but I couldn't catch it. After tossing the last of the dishes into the sink, she spun around. "Why? Why is this happening?" "The best guess I have is that they're tired of being humiliated." "What are you even talking about?" "Mainly your affair with Brian Masterson. You've been so obvious about it that the entire family knows. You've shown zero respect for the kids or me. What? Are you going to deny it? Are you going to deny it? Are you going to claim you're not spending several nights a week at different motels? Are you really going to pretend I don't know what's going on?" I no longer wanted to keep talking. Throwing it all in her face would have been the easy option, but I didn't have the heart for it. I pushed back my chair and left the room. Catherine stood by the sink, her hand on her hip, giving me a defiant look, as if daring me to bring up the affair again. It felt like she had been taunting me just to give herself a reason to stop feeling guilty. I wasn't in the mood to hear that I had driven her to cheat because I was a mediocre husband or a lousy lover. Sure, I could have called her out for her betrayal, but in the end I knew she'd find a way to shift the blame onto me. I knew Catherine well. She had her arguments lined up, ready to go. The best move I had was to say nothing. "And what about your job?" she asked. "I'm quitting." I heard her call my name as I walked out the door. I didn't know where the kids were, but all their clothes and personal items were packed in Rob's Subaru. The van had over 100,000 kilometers on it, but I figured it had at least another 100,000 left. My own clothes and important documents were in the back of my Jeep. Catherine hadn't noticed any of this when she got home. We had all agreed we could come back for anything we hadn't taken during the first trip. I was sure she was inspecting the house as I drove away. There was no going back now. I decided to call Donna. She always seemed to have things under control, even more than Rob, who was technically the oldest and man of the house. "Donna, it's Dad. Are you still at home?" "No, I'm on my way to a motel." "I should have told your mother what's happening, but I didn't. It's probably best if you guys find somewhere else to stay tonight. Can you reach Rob?" "No problem. Darcy and I are planning to stay with Betsy Cooper. I'm not sure about Rob's plans, but I'll try to contact him." "Good. Let's meet at the Waffle House on Lancaster Pike tomorrow at 6 a.m. From there, we'll head to Frackville." Dad, was Mum furious? "I think so. I'll tell you more tomorrow. Oh, and after you talk to Rob, it might be a good idea to turn off your phone." After checking into the Desa Motel, I turned off my cell. I had just finished showering when there was a knock on the door. When I opened the door, expecting to face an angry Catherine, I was instead welcomed by a smiling Rob. There weren't many motels around, and by 7 the next morning we were already on our way to the coal region. Catherine and I never got a moment to talk about my employment situation, but it didn't really matter since I was out of a job. In circumstances like these, the common strategy is to save as much money as possible without raising suspicion. If I had gone through with filing for divorce, I would have been forced to declare assets and deal with equitable distribution, but I decided to avoid all of that. While no one likes watching their credit score rise, under these conditions, it felt like a smart move. Without a job, my kids could qualify for plenty of grants and financial aid when they started college. I was determined to ensure they got everything they needed, even if it didn't seem entirely fair. Staying with my parents would also cover most of the usual expenses. I was pretty sure that Catherine wouldn't wait long to file for divorce, and when she did, I'd probably agree to whatever she wanted just to finalize the separation. With no job and the kids unlikely to go with her, there wasn't much she could take. All I could do now was wait and make the best of the situation. I had a basket of lemons, and I was going to make lemonade. It felt good to be back in my hometown. The last time I lived there was just before heading off to college. After graduating, the nearest place I could find suitable work was Reading. Catherine, originally from Baltimore, didn't mind being just a few hours away from home. We got married right before I started my final semester at the University of Pennsylvania. Catherine, however, didn't finish her degree because of the pregnancy. She never showed any interest in going back to school, and I suspect she went to college mainly to escape her parents and find a husband. In any case, I thought I had hit the jackpot in marriage, 3 wonderful kids, and a wife who became quite challenging. Sure, I had some regrets, but I wasn't the type to dwell on the past. Little did I realize that my past would catch up to me so soon. Having old friends in the area made finding temporary work fairly easy. I was putting away as much money as I could, making sure Catherine couldn't access it. Life would be difficult until she finally moved forward with the divorce, if she ever did. All 3 of the kids helped out without being asked. I think they felt obligated given the situation. I didn't leave Catherine because the kids wanted me to, but it seemed like that's what they believed. My parents accepted money from us, though I was pretty sure they didn't really need it. They just didn't want me to feel like a burden. 2 weeks later, Catherine called to ask if I was still going to pay the mortgage. I told her I wasn't. 2 weeks after that, she called again, this time about renewing her car insurance. I gave her the same answer. Catherine tried to bring up her affair, sounding apologetic and sincere, but it didn't land. I listened quietly as she explained how her friendship with Masterson had evolved into a full-blown relationship, assuring me it was purely physical and nothing more. After a few minutes, she realized how ridiculous it all sounded and stopped mid-sentence. I didn't respond. "I'm sorry, John, I have no excuse for what I did. I really regret it," she said. After that, she stopped calling. I think Catherine finally accepted that the marriage couldn't be saved and decided to file for divorce. She now had to deal with the mortgage, car payments, and all the utility bills. Of course, I was technically responsible for paying those, but given that countless fathers in similar positions avoided it, I figured I could too, at least for the time being. It was a risk I was willing to take. I signed the papers and granted power of attorney for the house sale as soon as I got them. Now, it was just a matter of time. Catherine didn't ask for anything beyond the house, and after all the expenses, there wouldn't be much left for her. Rob was gathering his paperwork for college, and we had to stay in state to make tuition affordable. Many grants were hard to secure because I had to provide last year's tax returns, but I managed to explain my employment status and got a few places to waive the income requirement. Unfortunately, Rob had more pressing problems. My past was catching up to me, and Rob was stuck in the middle of it. "Dad, I've got a little problem. I guess you think you can help," he started. A few weeks ago, he'd met a girl he really liked, and at least the conversation began on a positive note. In high school, Rob had dated a few girls but never showed serious interest in any of them, so it was good to hear he might be looking for something more long-term. "I'm guessing this isn't about the birds and the bees," I said. "No, I've got that part covered. I met her mum for the first time, and as soon as I introduced myself, she got upset. After I left, she told Shannon she couldn't see me anymore. She's never done this with any of Shannon's other boyfriends, and she didn't give her any explanation. Shannon was upset with her mum, but eventually they agreed that they could continue seeing each other, but only if I talked to her. So, let me get this straight. This girl's mum will let you two keep dating, but only if she speaks to me first," I asked. "Pretty much, yeah," Rob confirmed. Shannon had said her mum had never done anything like this before. "I think I can make time. Just set it up and let me know when and where." Rob left the room with a big grin, and I sat there wondering why this woman needed to meet me before approving their relationship. That evening, Rob drove us to Shannon's house. It was an old, worn-down place just off the main road, in desperate need of a fresh coat of paint, and the tiled walkway had been uneven for years. Shannon was standing at the front door and eagerly opened it as we approached. "Hi, I'm Shannon," she greeted us with a cheerful smile, and I immediately saw why Rob liked her. "We really appreciate you coming, Mr. Rell. Sorry we had to do it this way, but my mum insisted. I hope you don't mind. Don't worry, it's fine. I'm sure we can clear everything up quickly, Mom, Mr. Rell is here," she called out. My heart skipped a beat as my old high school and college love, Abigail Connor, entered the room. "Hello, John." "Hi, Abby." The words slipped out naturally. An awkward silence followed, quickly broken by Rob. "Wait. You two know each other?" Abby kept her eyes on me. "Your father and I went to school together." Shannon seemed pleased by this revelation. "Well, that should make things easier, right? I've got fresh coffee ready. We'll be more comfortable in the kitchen." I followed her to the back of the house, and as I sat down, she turned to the kids. "You two should wait in the living room. Turn on the TV and behave yourselves. I'll call you in a few minutes." Abby went to make coffee, and I drifted into memories. It was our senior year at the University of Pennsylvania, and Abby and I had a falling out because I didn't want to go home for Thanksgiving. She left without me, and while she was gone, I partied too much, got drunk, and ended up getting arrested for causing a disturbance. My parents were furious, and when Abby returned, she refused to talk to me. She was still angry when the semester ended, and she went home alone for Christmas. Since I wasn't on good terms with my family, I stayed on campus. That's when the bad news came. Between Christmas and New Year's, Catherine approached me, claiming that during one of my drunken nights, we had slept together, and now she was pregnant. Given my strained relationship with my parents, I didn't want to upset them further, so without much thought, Catherine and I drove to Gretna Green that day and got married. I didn't tell my parents until after I graduated the following spring. Abby found out about the marriage when she returned to school after a few years and dropped out immediately. I never found out if she finished. "Did you fall asleep?" Abby's voice snapped me back to the present as she placed a cup of coffee in front of me. She looked almost the same as she had 20 years ago, still beautiful. My mind raced, comparing what might have been with what actually was. "Sorry, I wasn't expecting this. Give me a minute to catch up." Talking to Abby had always felt natural, and I had been at ease around her. I couldn't even remember what we had argued about all those years ago. Suddenly, I realized I didn't know her married name or even Shannon's last name for that matter. It was time to break the tension. "So, is there a Mr. Abby, or are we having this conversation alone?" She didn't smile at my attempt at humor. "That's why I asked you to come. I'm not seeking anything, but I hope we can avoid a problem." "What do you mean by not looking for anything, John?" "I've never been married. I tried dating, but nothing ever worked out. Most men weren't interested in being with a single mom and were just looking for something casual." "I still don't get it, damn it, John. You're Shannon's father." The words spilled out before she could find a softer way to say them. I sat there, stunned. I had no idea. "Can I have some more coffee? That's it. That's all you have to say." Abby's frustration was clear. "I understand why you told them they couldn't see each other anymore. Unfortunately, it might be too late. By the time I realized Rob was your son, they had already gotten close. Oh no, are you telling me my son and my daughter are? I'm almost sure of it. I thought siblings were supposed to dislike each other. The coffee was too hot to drink, so I blew on it while Abby stared at me, waiting for some wise words that I didn't have. Abby, I don't think we have much of a choice, do we? We need to tell them and hope it's not too late. The tension in the room shifted. I'm sorry, John. I should have told you sooner, but I couldn't bring myself to. You had just gotten married, and I didn't want to ruin everything, and instead, you complicated things for yourself. I have a wonderful, smart daughter. I didn't ruin my life, but I did have to make some adjustments. I finished my coffee and leaned back in my chair. By the way, John, I don't mean to pry, but where's Catherine? We've grown apart, I said, using the phrase one heard so many times before but never expected to say. Oh, I'm sorry for asking. We sat quietly for a moment. John, do you want to tell them, or should you tell them, and I'll support you as much as I can? Less than a minute later, Shannon and Rob joined us at the kitchen table. Abby slid a folded piece of paper across the table. To Shannon. Oh my God, Shannon gasped, immediately catching Rob's attention, though she hadn't even unfolded the document yet. What's going on? This is the birth certificate I wasn't supposed to see until I turned 21. Rob looked puzzled. What's so special about a birth certificate? Shannon didn't answer as she unfolded the paper, her eyes wide with shock. No, this can't be real. This has to be a mistake. Mom, tell me this isn't true. Abby didn't respond, her gaze fixed on the floor. Shannon, frustrated, threw the birth certificate across the table and ran out of the room in tears. Dad, what's going on? Rob demanded. I'm sorry, Rob, it's been hard for us to tell you, but you need to know what? What's happening? Shannon, is your sister? The kitchen fell silent, and we could hear Shannon crying somewhere in the house. Rob stood up and quietly left the room, clearly overwhelmed. After a few moments, the sobs began to subside. Abby, do you have a beer? By the time we finished our second beer, Rob reappeared. Can we go home now, Dad? 2 days later, Rob finally spoke to me again. The house had felt somber, and I was relieved something was happening. I want a DNA test. I've got the money for it, and I'm not taking no for an answer. Where can we do it? There's a lab in Allentown. Each test costs $200. I need samples from Shannon, you, and me. Well, if we're doing this, we might as well test the girls too. I'll cover the cost. Do we need to go in person, or can they send the test kits by mail? Both are options, but I prefer going in person. Great, get everything arranged and we'll make a day out of it. I'll even treat you to dinner at Olive Garden. Later that day, I called my wife's company and spoke with the head of their legal department. He made it clear that he wasn't interested in my personal life, but he was very curious about how Brian Masterson had been paying for the motel rooms he was using. When I mentioned that Masterson was Catherine's boss and that I wanted to know the company's stance on workplace affairs, he abruptly ended the call. A few days later, Catherine called me, sounding different. She had lost her job and was struggling to pay her bills. She seemed upset when I told her that I hadn't found work yet and was relying on my parents for support. She asked me for enough money to move back to Baltimore. She had put the house up for sale, but things weren't going well, and she was hoping to leave Pennsylvania before her car was repossessed. She tried once again to explain her affair with Masterson, but quickly gave up when I stayed silent. Though she didn't mention it, I knew Brian Masterson had also been fired, and she never understood why. 2 days later, everything changed. I walked into the house to find Rob and Shannon sitting on the couch, grinning like two Cheshire cats. They sat there with silly smiles on their faces as I cleared my throat. All right, what's going on? Why the long faces? I joked weakly, but they laughed anyway. Do you want the good news or the bad news? Don't you have that mixed up? We don't think so. Some of it might be bad, but overall, it's pretty good. Stop playing games. Donna and Darcy are both your daughters. The DNA match came through. I guess they'll be happy about that. They don't know yet. What else aren't you telling me? Shannon is your daughter too, another near-perfect match. I'm still confused. When does the interesting part start? Don't be mad, but I'm not your son. I wasn't expecting that. I loved Rob like my own and had raised him as any father would. Now he was telling me I wasn't really his dad. I need another beer. The smiles faded from their faces and things got a bit more serious. I came back with a fresh bottle and collapsed into my chair. Dad, this doesn't change anything. You'll always be my father, no matter what the DNA test says. I don't know who my biological father is, but you'll always be my dad. I downed half of the bottle in one go. I don't know if I should feel happy or sad. I don't know if this is good or bad news. I don't even know what to do. Rob and Shannon just sat there quietly. Have you told your mother yet, Shannon? No, then why don't you two go share the news with her? I need some time to think. My parents were in the kitchen trying to stay out of it. They had always been kind. John, if there's anything we can do, let us know. We won't offer advice, but we'll help however we can. Dad had always supported me, and I wanted to be there for Rob. Abby found me a few hours later at the Circle Bar. I'm not sure how she knew I was there, and I couldn't remember how I got so drunk. Looking back, I don't even understand why I drank that much. Things weren't that bad, just confusing. It had been a decade since I last drank too much, and now I didn't have any real excuse for doing it. I woke up on Abby's couch, still dressed except for my shoes, and to my embarrassment I realized I had wet myself. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, but the bathroom was my first priority. When I came back downstairs, Abby was waiting for me at the kitchen table. The bathroom in these old houses was always on the second floor, and just making it there was a struggle. She didn't offer me anything but coffee, which was probably for the best. I really messed up. I don't even know who I should apologize to. First, looks like you weren't the only one with Catherine that weekend. You just drew the short straw. Damn it, I don't even remember being with her. I just assumed because of how she came to me. I had no alibi and no way to prove I hadn't slept with her. Like an idiot, I took the easy way out. I must be the biggest fool on earth. Abby didn't respond right away. Finally, she spoke. Hey, don't look at me like that. I completely agree with your self-assessment. I don't know what to do. I thought the divorce was already happening. It is, but I think you should focus on something else right now. What's that? Start by taking a shower and shaving. You're a mess. I was in bad shape and feeling terrible. Can you give me a ride home for the next few days? Rob was in good spirits, and the girls seemed content, at least with the genetic side of things, though they were still upset with their mother. My parents were as supportive as they could be without getting too involved, and I appreciated that more than they knew. Rob was the first to suggest we take action. Dad, I want to make lemonade. What are you talking about? Remember how you always said if life gives you lemons, make lemonade? I nodded. Well, we've got a whole bunch of lemons, so let's get started. How proud can a father be? She needs to know, Dad. Mom has to find out who my real father might be. It was at a fraternity party, right? That means one of your brothers is my biological father, and he lets you take the blame. Is there any way to get her to give you a few names? Wait, you're implying it's more than one name. You don't think much of your mom, do you not, after what she did to you back then, and definitely not now? She was unfaithful then, and still is. How did you stay with her all these years? I avoided answering that last question. I have an idea. I don't know if it'll work, but it's worth a shot. Later that day, I called my wife. I tried to gather my thoughts about what I wanted to say, but worried that I might lose track and mess it up. John, what's this about? I wasn't expecting your call, she said, her voice making me fear she might think I was trying to reconcile. I was determined to make sure she didn't get the wrong idea. I've been thinking about our last conversation. You mentioned wanting to move in with your sister. Is that still something you're considering? Yes, I am. Have you thought of a way to help me? If so, I'd be very grateful. I can give you $2,000 to help you get started, but I need something in return that would be a huge help. What do you need from me? I'm guessing you don't know I had DNA tests done for all the kids. Oh no, she said softly, making it clear she hadn't known about the tests. I'm sorry, John. I was hoping that would never come up. It seemed like you and Rob were getting along so well. I found it interesting that she mentioned Rob and not Darcy or Donna. What about the girls? I don't know what you mean, John. What do the girls have to do with this? Doesn't their DNA test concern you? No, why would it? Her response seemed genuine, so I decided not to push further. I want to know the name or names of the men who could be Rob's father. Give me that, and you can have the $2,000. There was a much longer pause than I expected on the other end of the line. Catherine, whoever this guy is, he didn't care enough to make an honest woman out of you. Why are you protecting him? He used you and left me to deal with the fallout. I'm the one who deserves to know, not him. All right, there were 3 of them. I don't know who the father is. I'd appreciate it if you told me their names. Kay Simmons, Rafe Aronson, and Philip Berger. I knew all of them. 3 entitled, rich kids who thought they could get away with anything. They were all active members of the fraternity, but proved to be far less honorable. Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate it. What else do you need from me, John? If you're not staying in the house and you can't sell it, can I take it over? Oh my God, yes, I can't sell it and I'd love to hand it over to you. Even if I found a buyer, I wouldn't make enough to cover the realtor's commission. You can have it as soon as I move out. I'll sign whatever papers you need. I also have a small request, she added. What is it? Can you arrange for me to see the kids? I don't need much, but I am still their mother, and I'd like to visit them from time to time. I'm sure we can work something out. 2 days later, Catherine received her $2,000, and I took ownership of the house and the mortgage. Rob had no trouble finding information on the possible fathers, though obtaining their DNA was a bit more complicated, but not impossible. Raith Aronson worked as a middle school teacher in Altoona, and since all public employees are required to have their DNA on file, Rob had no trouble accessing what he needed. It turned out Raith wasn't Rob's father. Philip Berger worked for the Ohio prison system and had a history of getting involved with younger women the state felt were too young for someone his age. While I'm not here to pass judgment, I was relieved to know where Philip was. Of course, people like him are always in the database, and though I don't know how Rob got the information, it was clear that Philip wasn't Rob's father either. If Catherine had been truthful with me, then K. Simmons was the one. The search for him continued. Seymour Schlamp and I went to high school together. He attended Dickerson and earned a law degree, while I went to Penn State. Seymour and the legal field weren't exactly a perfect match. He wasn't the brightest, and he could be sloppy, to say the least. However, he was the perfect partner for our project. Using the Nittany Lions alumni newsletter and fraternity websites, we tracked down Lieutenant Colonel Simmons, stationed at Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland. Kay had been a big shot in college and seemed to have made a career out of it. Abby had a cousin in the Pennsylvania National Guard who was able to access Kyle's DNA data, and we had a match. Houston, we are ready for liftoff. By the end of the week, Catherine had moved out of the house, and instead of catching up on the overdue mortgage payments, I refinanced the loan, removing her name from all the documents. I moved back into the house, though the kids wanted to stay in Frackville until the school year ended. Rob wanted to remain close to Shannon, and I suppose I wanted to be near Abby. Still, there was a lot to take care of. I was surprised by the poor job Catherine's lawyer had done. It would have been easy for him to figure out I hadn't actually quit my job but had taken a leave of absence instead. Apparently, he never checked. It seemed like he used some basic divorce form he found online. There were still a few months before the final ruling, but I didn't anticipate any issues. The downside to returning to work was that Rob lost his college scholarship. The upside was that I could pay for his education or get a loan if needed. Abby worked in a billing office for doctors, a 9-to-5 job 5 days a week. I started spending every weekend in Frackville. Rob and Shannon got along well, but there was one small hitch. Shannon spent a lot of time with Darcy and Donna. Mostly they went on shopping trips, and Rob wasn't thrilled about having to share her with others. Abby and I found it amusing, but in a good way. For some reason, Abby and I acted more like old friends than former lovers, and neither of us seemed ready to take the first step toward rekindling anything romantic. Seymour, in his usual fashion, bombarded the court system with every document he could think of. He was working off the shotgun theory, believing that if he filed enough claims against Simmons, 1 or 2 would stick. He also hoped at least one case would settle partially so he could collect some of his fees. I hadn't paid him a cent, but he didn't seem to care as long as he had some stake in the outcome. I didn't want any lawsuits, but it would be nice if we could cover Rob's college costs, making things easier when the girls started school. Fortunately, the DNA issue didn't affect my relationship with Rob. Nothing between us changed. Rob was just relieved that he and Shannon weren't siblings. I was happy to be her father, although I regretted not having spent more time with her during her childhood. She was stuck in the middle of this whole mess, but she didn't seem too shaken by it. Life eventually started to settle down. I cleaned up the house, but living alone wasn't something I enjoyed. Rob and Shannon had graduated high school and were both employed. In 2 months, Rob was set to attend a state college, while Shannon planned to begin a 2-year program in medical administration at Reading Area Community College. Catherine called from Baltimore. Her relationship with her parents was on rocky ground, and she was still living with her sister, unable to afford her own place. She was struggling to find work due to poor references from her previous job. She expressed regret over everything that had happened and wished she could go back and undo her mistakes. She hoped I could forgive her, but that wasn't something I could offer. However, she was happy to hear that the girls were planning a trip to Baltimore to visit her. The conversation ended on a positive note. By the end of the summer, my life started falling into place. The divorce was finalized without any additional terms. On the advice of his lawyer, Kyle Simmons admitted he was Rob's father. Instead of a financial settlement, it was agreed that Kyle would cover all of Rob's college costs for 4 years. Kyle also ended up paying Seymour's fees. Unfortunately for Kyle, things got worse. His wife filed for divorce, which entitled her to 49% of Kyle's pension. Simple math revealed that Rob had been conceived just 4 weeks before Kyle's wedding, and this, along with some other poor choices, was the final straw for his wife. The nicest surprise that summer came when Abby showed up at my house. It was too late for dinner, but the timing was perfect for a bottle of wine. She stayed quiet until we were settled comfortably. "John, I need a favor," she began, and I appreciated how she started the conversation, as I felt I owed her and was eager to help. "Shannon's starting classes soon, and I'm not too comfortable with her driving to school, especially through the mountains in the winter. I wanted to ask if she could stay here with you. The girls will be back, and I think they'll all get along well." She hesitated for a moment before continuing. "There's one more thing. Shannon and I have never been apart, and I'm nervous about her being on her own." "She won't be alone," I said. "I'll be here, and so will the girls." The frustrated look on Abby's face made me realize I had said the wrong thing. "I'm sorry, Abby. That wasn't the response you were expecting, was it? Help me out here." "I swear, John Rell, you're the most clueless man I know," she said with a laugh. "I'm not letting you off easy this time. I'll sit here until you figure it out. Now, pour me some more wine." It only took about 5 seconds for me to realize what she meant. Before I had even finished pouring the wine, a wide smile spread across my face. In the end, everything turned out the way it was supposed to. Rob is thriving at Penn State and visits whenever he can. Shannon is excelling in her studies and is on track to graduate 6 months early. Donna was accepted into James Madison University in Virginia with a great scholarship, while Darcy is still undecided about her college plans. Abby, now Mrs. Rell, runs a small medical practice serving 3 counties. She hopes Shannon will be ready to take over the business when their baby arrives. "We've made plenty of lemonade," as a famous English writer once said. Life goes on. Thank you for listening until the end. See you in the next episode of Cheating Stories. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Goodbye.